Hey everyone, ready for some economic forecasting?
Always.
Okay, good. Today we're going deep on this Nomura report about what India's consumption is going to look like in 2025.
Sounds dense.
It is, but that's why we're here, right? To break it all down, make it easy to understand. So basically, India's economy is projected to grow a little slower in the coming year. We're going to explore what that means for people spending money and for different industries.
Makes sense. Got to keep an eye on those trends.
Exactly. But get this, even with this slowdown, India is expected to totally crush its previous record sales for two-wheeled vehicles.
That's interesting.
Right. How is that possible? Well, we'll get into that.
Yeah, I'm curious about that. The report says Nomura thinks India's GDP growth will slow to 6.0% in that fiscal year 2025.
Okay.
That's down from 8.2% the previous year. Inflation should decrease, but it could still affect how much people can spend.
Right. Kind of like a reset after things were just super high demand.
Yeah, and the global economy is a factor too.
For sure. So it's not necessarily a bad thing. It just is what it is.
Exactly. This slowdown might even be healthy.
Okay, so big picture, that's the economic situation. But what does all this mean for actual products and industries?
Well, the report says we should expect slower growth in most categories, but premium segments are going to keep gaining share.
Interesting. So even if things slow down, people are still spending more on higher end stuff.
It seems that way, yeah.
Why do you think that is?
It's a couple of things, I think. Incomes are rising, especially growing middle class. But also people just want more, you know? Status, quality, and experience. It's not just about the basics anymore.
Okay, so let's talk about automobiles. That's a big one where this premium trend is super obvious. The report says that slowdown might hit lower-end vehicles harder, but premium SUVs, larger motorcycles, and electric vehicles could grow faster.
It's really interesting to see how those preferences are evolving. And we got to remember that India has one of the lowest rates of car ownership in the world.
Really?
Yeah, per person. So huge potential for growth there long term.
Especially in the passenger vehicle area?
Right. The report thinks passenger vehicles will gradually recover. They could grow by 5% in fiscal year 2026. That'll be driven by lower interest rates and clearing out inventory.
And that ties into that whole SUV craze, right? Seems like everyone wants an SUV.
Totally. It's a global thing. But what about two-wheelers? Those are supposed to break records in fiscal year 2026.
Right, over 21 million.
It's partly because of that strong rural demand we talked about, where two-wheelers are essential for transportation. But also, people want bigger motorcycles. It's not just about getting around, it's about the experience, like we were saying.
So even with this potential slowdown, some sectors are going to do really well. What about EVs? Where do they fit in?
Good question. The report says EV use will keep going up. It'll reach 4% for passenger vehicles and 7.6% for two-wheelers in fiscal year 2026.
Ah, that's a big jump.
Yeah, a few things are driving that. Government support, for one. Initiatives like the FAME subsidies and good GST rates. But there are also more affordable EV models coming out, so more people can buy them.
And the report mentions that even with CNG prices maybe going up, the shift to EVs should accelerate. That means people really see EVs as a real option, not just a way to save money.
Yeah, I think consumer perception is changing, for sure. EVs aren't a niche thing anymore.
Makes sense, especially with everyone being more aware of the environment and wanting cleaner transportation.
Exactly. The report also talks about those stricter CAFE norms. They're those fuel efficiency regulations. Automakers got to prioritize electric and hybrid vehicles, so the transition will happen even faster.
So EVs are going to be way more important in India's car world.
Absolutely. But this shift to EVs brings up a question. How will it affect the traditional car supply chain?
Oh yeah, that's a good point. EVs need different parts and manufacturing compared to regular cars. It's almost like a whole different industry.
Yeah, and that's where it gets interesting. The report says that these trends, premium stuff and EVs, should be good for the auto part suppliers that make higher value components. Things like alloy wheels, advanced driver assistance systems, sunroofs, LED lights, and EV-specific parts.
So the companies that can adapt and make these higher-end components will do well in this changing market.
Yeah, they're the ones in a good spot to take advantage of those shifting preferences. The report even mentions some potential winners companies like Guno Minda, Minda Industries, Sona BLW Precision Forgings, and Sincera Engineering.
It's wild how these trends change the whole car industry. The cars themselves and the companies making the parts, it's like a chain reaction.
Yeah, and it's not just cars. This shift towards fancier stuff and new technologies is affecting other industries too.
Perfect. Let's talk about what the report says about consumer durables and electronics. Okay, so we're talking about how people wanting premium products and new tech is changing different industries. What does this report say about consumer durables and electronics?
So the report is pretty optimistic about electronics manufacturing services, those EMS companies.
Okay, remind me, what do EMS companies do again?
They're the ones that actually make the electronics for all the different brands, like the behind-the-scenes folks putting together our phones and stuff.
So they're super important, but we might not know their names.
Exactly. And the report thinks they're going to keep growing a lot. Revenue could grow over 40% in fiscal year 2026.
Whoa, that's a big jump. What's causing that?
There are a few things happening. One is this China plus one thing. Companies want to make their stuff in more places than just China.
Right. Diversify, find new production hubs.
Yep. And India is looking like a good option.
Makes sense. India has a lot of skilled workers, and the government really wants more manufacturing there.
Exactly. Plus, the report specifically mentions new government incentives are helping the EMS sector. Makes it more appealing for companies to set up there.
Win-win then. Companies get a good place to manufacture, and India gets investment and jobs.
Yeah. The report also says that electronics are becoming more important in other industries, which also increases demand for EMS.
It's crazy how it's all connected. One sector growing helps another.
Speaking of connections, we can't forget about digital commerce in India.
Oh yeah, everyone's buying stuff online these days.
And the report says it'll keep growing. But the focus will be on making money and improving profit margins.
So the industry is maturing, right? Not just about getting a ton of new users anymore.
Yeah, now it's about building businesses that are actually profitable, just like we're seeing with tech overall. Consolidation and focusing on profits.
Makes sense. Growth isn't everything if you're not making money.
Right. And the report highlights something interesting here. The classifieds part of digital commerce, like sites for used cars, could benefit from automakers spending more on ads.
Why would that be?
Remember how we talked about more competition in the car market? Maybe even too many cars.
Yeah, some segments are slowing down while others are growing.
Well, with all that competition, automakers will probably advertise more to get customers and sell those cars. And those classified platforms become a good way to reach buyers.
It's all connected. It's like a giant economic puzzle.
Exactly. Let's talk about consumer staples and discretionary products now.
So like everyday stuff. Food, drinks, personal care, clothes, all that.
Yeah. The report thinks sales growth in these areas will mostly come from higher prices, not more people buying.
So companies are raising prices, maybe because things cost more to make or to keep profits up.
Right. But it might be hard to raise prices too much, especially if people are watching their spending.
Tough situation. Consumers are looking for good prices and can always switch to cheaper brands.
And the report says DTC brands and quick commerce might not grow as much because demand is weaker overall.
Interesting. Those D2C brands that sell online and quick commerce with super fast delivery have been really popular.
Yeah, but if people are careful with money, that growth might slow down.
Makes sense. When the economy is good, people try new things and pay extra for convenience. But when things slow down, they stick with what they know and want good value.
Yep. This could actually help those big established companies with well-known brands.
So it's a complicated situation. Global economics and how people are behaving are shaping India's consumer market.
And it's just a prediction. Things could change depending on how all these factors play out.
Right, it's not a guarantee, but it helps us think about what might happen.
Exactly. Businesses need to stay flexible, adapt to the market, and understand how consumers are feeling.
For sure. The companies that can do that will succeed.
Before we talk about specific companies, let's go back to premiumization and auto part suppliers. The report talks about sunroofs in India.
Sunroofs? That doesn't seem like a big trend.
But it shows how people wanting premium features leads to demand for more expensive parts. Sunroofs used to be a luxury, only on fancy cars.
Right, you didn't see them much in India.
But now people want them, even on more affordable cars.
So those premium features are becoming more normal.
Exactly. And that's great news for companies that make sunroofs.
Shows how small changes in what people want can affect the whole supply chain.
Absolutely. It's important to pay attention to those small changes.
What about other high-tech features, like those driver assistance systems?
Those are getting big too. They're called ADS, and they use sensors and cameras to make driving safer and better.
Like lane departure warning, adaptive cruise control, automatic braking, even self-parking.
Yep. Those used to be only on luxury cars, but now you see them on regular cars because the technology is better and cheaper.
And as cars get more automated, this trend will just keep going.
Right. The report says this is a big opportunity for companies making those ADS parts, like sensors and cameras.
So the car industry is changing really fast because of technology and what consumers want. That creates both problems and opportunities.
And the companies that can handle those changes and come up with new ideas will be the ones that grow.
We've talked about a lot today. The economic outlook, premiumization, EVs, and how this all affects suppliers.
We've covered a lot about India's consumer market.
But the report goes even deeper, analyzing specific companies.
It does, and that's what we'll talk about next.
Okay, let's take a closer look at some of those companies after a quick break. Okay, so we're back, and before the break we were talking about how all these trends, premiumization, EVs, new technologies, they're creating winners and losers. Who does the report think will come out on top?
Well, they point to a few automakers and auto part suppliers that are in a good spot to benefit from all these changes.
Okay, let's start with those automakers. Any big names?
Yeah, in the OEM space, they highlight Mahindra, M&M, and Hyundai India. They say they have good potential for earnings growth.
Right, M&M makes those SUVs, right. Fits in with that SUV trend we were talking about.
Exactly. They've been smart about taking advantage of that demand. Plus, they're moving into EVs too, so they're in a strong position.
Covering all the bases. What about Hyundai?
Hyundai has a lot of popular cars across different segments, so they appeal to a lot of people. And they've also been putting a lot of money into EVs because they know that's the future.
Both M&M and Hyundai are adapting and moving with the times.
Yeah, they seem to be doing the right things. Now let's switch gears and talk about those auto part suppliers. The report says a few companies will benefit from the fact that cars are just more complex now, with more features and components. It's all part of this premiumization and EV trend.
Right, we talked about Uno Minda, Minda Industries, Sona BLW Precision Forgings, and Sansera Engineering.
Okay, so Uno Minda, they supply a bunch of different car parts. Lighting systems, switches, mirrors, all kinds of stuff. They've been adding to their product line to meet that demand for premium features and EV parts.
So they're not just standing still, they're changing with the times.
Yep, you got to be able to adapt. Now, Minda Industries, they're big in lighting systems, batteries, and those alloy wheels that everyone wants.
Another sign of premiumization.
Totally. And then there's Sona BLW Precision Forgings. They make gears and differential assemblies. Those are important for both regular and electric vehicles. But they're also making EV-specific parts, like electric axles.
So they're taking what they know and applying it to the new stuff.
Smart move.
Mm-hmm.
And lastly, Sansera Engineering. They make precision-engineered components for different industries, including cars. They're a big supplier of connecting rods, rocker arms, all those essential engine parts.
So even though things are moving towards electric, there's still a need for the traditional engine parts.
Yeah, for now at least. That transition will take time, so companies like Sansera are in a good spot.
It's cool to see how all these companies are reacting to these big market trends and, in a way, shaping the future.
It really shows how dynamic business is. The ones that can see what's coming, adapt, and come up with new ideas, they'll be the ones that succeed.
Well, this has been a really interesting deep dive. We've talked about the big economic picture, specific trends, and even some companies that might benefit from all of this.
We've covered a lot about India's consumer market.
And remember, all this was put together just for you. Based on your interest in India's economic future, we hope you found it helpful and interesting.
Absolutely.
If you want even more details and analysis, check out that full Nomura report.
There's a ton of information in there.
But for now, we hope you feel like you have a better understanding of what's happening in India's consumer market and what might happen in the coming years.
Definitely.
Thanks for joining us and keep learning.